Hey guys, welcome back to a brand new video, and today we are going to be looking at the 2021 California recall election and how competitive this race is shaping out to be. So, I haven't really made a video about this election, and up until now I've been kind of putting it off, mostly because I didn't think the race was going to be that competitive. I talked about it before in previous videos for, brief moments, but this race is turning out to be much more competitive than I think anyone anticipated, and for that I do think it deserves its own video. So this will be uploaded on August 14th, which will be a month before the election will be taking place. It'll be happening on Tuesday, September 14th, and I'll also probably make another video in between August 14th and September 14th, probably coming out the day of the recall or the day before, in that range, so I can make my final prediction county by county in margins and chance of winning, final race ratings. But yeah, we're going to be looking at this race and focusing more on why is this race so competitive, and as of right now, August 14th, who I expect to win this race. So, let's just take a look at the 2020 election results. So, you can probably tell why I would expect this race to be an easy win for Gavin Newsom, the incumbent Democratic governor. So, Joe Biden won the state by 30% in 2020, and as you can see, he did very well here, especially compared to Democrats in the past. So, in 2016, Hillary Clinton won the state by 30 points as well. But she got about 30%. She got about 61.5% of the vote. Biden got 63.5% of the vote, and the margin was reduced a little bit. But Biden, he got I think over 1 million votes more than Clinton. Yeah, he actually got significantly more than 2 million more votes than Hillary Clinton did, and he did very well in the state. He flipped a couple counties, specifically Inyo County and Butte County. Butte is the more important one because it has more people. Trump won it by around 4,000 votes in 2016. In 2020, Butte flipped to Joe Biden, where he carried it with 50,000 votes. Trump had won it with 45,000 the previous year. So Biden did pretty well in California, even for a Democrat, which I know we all know California is a pretty blue state, but Biden did very well in California, despite the fact that, he didn't really campaign there, obviously, and he actually lost support with some groups in California. Now, in the 2020 election, just to take a look at this, Hispanics made up about 31% of California's electorate, so, it's a significant portion, and nationwide, Joe Biden actually performed 4% worse than Hillary Clinton with Hispanics, so, you'd expect some sort of, I guess, collapse in the southern part of the city that's more predominantly Hispanic. Imperial County, I know for a fact, is 80% Hispanic. Biden carried it by, 24% in 2020. 2016, it went to Clinton by, well over 40%. So, there was certainly a collapse here for Joe Biden with Hispanic voters, but it didn't really matter because he did very well in the Bay Area, he did very well in Los Angeles, the city itself, and he made up ground with white working class areas within the state. He also did, he still did okay with Hispanics, and he did better specifically with younger white voters in the regions, the ski towns, I guess you could say, Alpine County, Nevada County, Placer County, Inyo County. He did better there. And California looked a lot more blue in 2020 at the county level than it did in 2016. So kind of, I guess as a result of that, Biden, you could say he overperformed Clinton in California. There's also an argument to say he underperformed her, but he got way more votes. He flipped more counties. So I'll say that California did that Joe Biden did fairly well, and despite his losses in, the more rural Hispanic parts of the state, like the aforementioned Imperial County. So this race, like I said, should not be as competitive as it is. But the reason that it's coming competitive is because California has had a history of recall against governors. So, the most recent recall election, it was also a successful election, was in 2003. Now, 2003, you obviously cannot compare the political, I guess, environment of 2003 to that of 2021. The Republican Party today in California is far less influential than it was in 2003. George Bush, actually, in 2004, a year later, he came within 10% of winning the state, and we've seen nearly a 20% swing in favor of the Democratic Party in California. Since then, you can even look at this map. I mean, I can name a ton of counties off my head that have gone blue, that were red in 2004. Orange County is a huge one. They have over 3 million people there. San Diego County, which is another big one, voted for George W. Bush in 2000. San Bernardino County, which is home to 2.4 million people, is a county that Joe Biden won by about 10%, that George W. Bush carried pretty easily. Inyo County, as I mentioned before, Butte County, then you see some of these counties over here. George Bush also did significantly better than Donald Trump in a lot of the more inland counties, like Kern County, for example. Kern County is, I believe, one of the largest counties in California that voted for a Republican in 2020. And George Bush did, I think, 10% better in Kern County than Donald Trump did. And in Butte County, as I mentioned before, he flipped that. I also forgot to mention that Redding, which I believe is in Shasta County, George W. Bush did better there than Donald Trump. So George W. Bush had a pretty impressive performance in California for a Republican. It wasn't really because he was significantly or was really a good candidate, but he went first of all in nationwide 2004, famous statistic that I've memorized by heart. George W. Bush won 44% of the Hispanic vote in 2004. Now, I'm not going to pull up 2004 exit polls. That would take a lot of time for me to dig around the internet and, download a bunch of files from CNN from 17 years ago that look like they haven't been touched in 20 years. But I can tell you that George W. Bush, certainly based on my assumptions, did a lot better than Donald Trump with Hispanics in California. And I'm assuming that he did better than Trump with Hispanics, especially in the counties that I mentioned he flipped. Southern California, it was so much better in 2004 than it was in 2020. Like I mentioned, San Diego, San Bernardino, Orange County, and also Riverside County, I believe is the name of that county. If I messed it up, I'm going to be very embarrassed with myself. Yeah, it is Riverside. I cannot believe I almost forgot that. So, yeah, and then Shasta County, like I said, Bush did very well there. This is another big Republican county, but yes, if I recall correctly, Kern is the biggest county that voted for Republicans in California. So, yeah. Now, there's actually a list here, and I'll say this for the last time, and I forgot to mention Fresno as well. So, as you can see right here, Bush remains the last Republican candidate to win the following counties in a presidential election: Fresno, Merced, Riverside, San Bernardino, San Diego, San Joaquin, San Luis Obispo, Stanislaus, I should know how to pronounce that, I'm from California, Ventura, and he was the last candidate of any party to win Butte County by a majority, so Butte County has been a swingy county since then. So yeah, Bush, to sum it up, did very, very well in California. John Kerry still won it because he did very well in the Bay. He still won Los Angeles. He still did okay in, the Northern California, the parts of the, Marin and above. I would consider Northern California. He did well in Eureka, for example. But he only won with 54% of the vote. If Joe Biden won California with 54% of the vote, I can guarantee you that, he would have lost Arizona. He would have lost Nevada because as a Democrat in today's environment, you cannot win California by 10%. 2004, it was acceptable for Kerry to win it by that much. 2020, not so much. So, you cannot really compare the environment in 2003, where a Democrat governor was successfully recalled, to that of 2020, where you see Gavin Newsom, who may not be the most popular figure, still being recalled. Now, Gray Davis, just to compare Gray Davis's popularity to Gavin Newsom, so, according to the most recent poll, Gavin Newsom's approval rating is, according to this poll, around 52%, and even in this poll, it was 46%. So, he's not a very popular governor, but Gray Davis's approval rating when he was recalled, if I recall correctly, no pun intended, was 25%. So, Gavin Newsom may not be the most popular guy, but he's still 20 to 25% more popular than Gray Davis was when he was recalled. We also have to remember that the Republican Party in California, like I said earlier, in 2003, they were much more well-positioned to win a race than they are in 2020. So, I think that the best case scenario for Republicans in this recall was if they got behind one candidate who could actually beat Newsom, got Newsom down to a one-on-one, and actually tried to win this race. And their California Republican Party has not even endorsed a candidate. They're kind of saying, we don't really care about this race, because I think that they think it's still unwinnable, despite some polls showing it narrowing up. And they're also running candidates who are not viewed that seriously by the general public. Caitlyn Jenner, as an example, not very popular within her own party, the Republican Party, not very popular within the Democratic Party either. In the latest poll, she only got 3% of the vote, and most people thought she was running as a joke. So, if people continue to view Caitlyn Jenner and other Republican candidates, running as a joke or not taking the race seriously, that's not going to help them. Now, I think the most qualified and the best Republican candidate to unseat Newsom would be San Diego Mayor Kevin Faulconer, who you can tell by the name. Kevin Faulconer is, again, the mayor of a blue city. San Diego County voted for Gavin Newsom by 14% in 2018 in his first election when he won his governor's seat, and then it voted for Joe Biden by 23% in 2020. So San Diego's a pretty blue area. It's not as blue as the rest of the state. It actually voted to the right of the state and has done so consistently, but it's still a pretty blue area. And Kevin Faulconer has had some impressive wins in the city, and it's pretty evident, I guess you could say, that he has some crossover appeal and that he could win some Democrats in a statewide race. Now, that being said, I'm not going to say for sure if I think that he'd beat Newsom if it was just a 1-1. I think it would be lean Democrat, but, I wouldn't be surprised at all if Kevin Faulconer came from behind and, given today's circumstances, beat Gavin Newsom. Now, we also have to remember that the latest polls have showed some pretty interesting results. So, let me scroll back down here to our polling data, and I also pulled up this poll. It's from Survey USA, those most interesting. So, most polls have had Newsom winning the recall being rejected by voters. As you can see, we've seen quite a few polls. We've seen polls that are close, some that are not as close. So this poll over here had Newsom winning the recall by 14, which would be, pretty disappointing for Republicans. Then we saw a crazy poll the other day that came out that had Newsom losing the recall by 11%, which we'll look at that in a second. I guess the most plausible recall poll we've seen is from More Information Group, which is a Republican internal poll. It's a Republican poll for sure, but it did have Newsom losing by 3. This poll had him losing by 4, another Republican internal poll. The best polls, I'd say, that have really, taken a look at this race are probably, Public Policy Institute is okay. They had Newsom winning by 16. But I wish we gotten some better polls. Emerson College is alright as well. They had Newsom winning by 4. That was back in March, though, so maybe not necessarily as accurate, which, now I'm thinking about March was quite a while ago, especially politically speaking. I didn't really, I wasn't, for me, who's someone who's pretty involved in politics, I didn't really care about the recall back in March, and I think there were a lot of undecideds, and that really shows. But we're going to look at this poll specifically. That was conducted from August 2nd to 4th. It was pretty recent, and it sampled 600 likely voters, had a 5-point margin of error, and had Newsom losing the recall by 11%. So let's look at the crossovers of this poll. And I'm a big poll analyst guy. I know it's boring for some people, but I really like it, and, we're just going to delve into the specifics of this poll, and we're going to be looking at one question. So, voters, number 3, voters will be asked to separate two questions in the recall election, two separate questions in the recall election. The first will ask if Newsom should or should not be recalled. A yes vote means that you want to recall Newsom as to remove Newsom as governor. A no vote means you want Newsom to remain as governor. Okay, so let's see. According to this poll, 51% of voters want Gavin Newsom to be removed as governor, 40% who want to keep him. Now, there are a couple of things wrong with this poll. First they have men and women essentially lining up with recall or keeps. They said, essentially men are basically match the electorate that wants to remove Newsom. Women want to keep Newsom. And, it makes sense that men are just more conservative than women. It's, men typically vote more favorable for the Republican Party than women have in the past. But I still don't see there being that big of a gap, especially in a state like California. I don't see there being that big of a gap between men and women, how they vote in this election. And we can also see that, as you can see, the age is really skewed here. So voters in between 18 to 34 voted to remove Newsom by 17%. This is, by the way, this is an electorate, and I'll show you right now, that essentially voted for Biden by 50%. Younger voters preferred Biden by 50% over Trump. And for them to have some drastic swing to the right, I guess you could say, in this election, them voting to recall Newsom by 17%, that is crazy. That's insane, to say the least. So I don't think that's plausible. I don't think that we're going to realistically see a scenario where younger voters vote to recall Newsom overall. It could be close if the Republicans do really well in this election, but I don't see them actually winning the youth vote. Now, 35 to 49-year-olds voted to remove Newsom by 3. It could happen. I still think they're going to vote to keep Newsom overall, but it could happen. Not as crazy as this. And then we also saw 50-64 voters. I think this is a group that's going to be most favorable to Republicans this election, voting to remove Newsom. So, yeah. And then we see the biggest gap here would be boomers voting to remove Newsom by 22%. I could see that happening, as we know. The senior vote is key for the Republican Party, but I still don't believe that the seniors being more favorable to the recall to keeping Newsom than youth votes than younger voters. So that is really something really, really interesting. And as you can see here, they kind of narrow it up here. They say that 18 to 49-year-olds, half of them wanted to remove Newsom. 40% of them wanted to keep him. Then basically stayed the same. 52% wanted to remove him. from voters who are 50 and older. 40% wanted to keep him. Now, some of the wackiest crosstabs of this poll are, first of all, you can see white voters backed the recall by 21%. Now, I do think that white voters are going to vote to recall Newsom. In 2020, white voters backed Biden by 4%, so it was pretty close, and we obviously know Newsom's going to run behind Biden in this election. But, wow, the white voters voting to recall Newsom by 21%, that's a lot. That would be a 25-point swing towards the Republican Party, and I'm not sure that I think that's likely to happen. So, another thing that we see here is that Hispanics vote to remove Newsom by 6%. 6%. And this is one of the most favorable demographics of Democrats in the state. It trended a little bit to the right in 2020 for sure, but Hispanics still overall made up a huge part of the Democratic coalition in California, and they voted for Joe Biden by 52%. Let's think about that. Do you really think that a demographic that voted against Trump by 52% is going to turn out on September 14th and vote to recall Gavin Newsom by 6%? Because I don't see that happening. It seems very, very unrealistic to me. Now, they didn't poll, or they didn't mention Asian voters, but the only electorate that they had, or the only demographic that they had Newsom winning was black voters who preferred Joe Biden by, as you can see here, a lot. The exact number is 67%. Black voters prefer Joe Biden by 67%. In this recall, they had black voters opposing the recall by, as you can see, 37%. So that would be a 20-point swing to the right. And I do think that black voters are going to swing to the right in this election. I think, Biden carried black voters by 67 in 2020. I think black voters might oppose the recall by something like 60 or 55. It'll depend on how bad the exit polls are, because exit polls are not always that accurate, but they're the best thing we have. So, this poll is predicting 20 to 60 point swings in some of these demographics, and that to me seems like really. I mean, I'm not going to say it's impossible, because in politics nothing is impossible unless you're a Democrat running in Wyoming, but I will say that the odds of this happening statistically improbable. That is what I will say. So that's your poll analysis for this video. We spent like 5 to 7 minutes on it. I don't want to spend too much time on it because I know you guys get bored, or I think some people are going to get bored. Like, if you like this stuff, comment down below, because I'm happy to do more poll analysis. We did a lot before 2020, kind of stopped because of I guess, lack of polling for 2022. We're going to get back to that. We're going to be getting back to form in 9-10 months from now, when the summer 22, we're going to get super crazy with polls. We're going to get nose deep in polling, and we're going to have a good time looking at it. So I guess I'll say that's it for this video. That's it for this video, guys. If you enjoyed, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you all next one. Goodbye.